Good evening. It is currently 11 o'clock where I'm at. I'm actually in my pajamas. Just finished up doing a bunch of homework, but today I was talking to one of my dungeon masters, and the subject came up about ending a campaign. In the campaign, we're 16th level, and naturally, that in my mind starts coming up. Well, how's this campaign going to wrap up? We didn't get too deep into it, but it got me thinking about how should you wrap up a campaign, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Uh, to start off, I'm going to say there are, I think, three ways a campaign can end. There is the fizzle, the explosion, and the finale. We're going to talk about the finale first. That's going to be about the first half of this video, as it's the most common, and I think the one that really requires the most effort and really discussion. So, as we dive in, I want to first kind of set up an analogy. I mean, you can think of, I think, Dungeons and Dragons campaigns like a TV show, with each session being an episode in the show and major plot arcs being seasons, if you will. So, with that in mind, we're going to talk about finales. This is where you and the players have decided it's time to put this campaign to rest. For whatever reason, you guys have said, yep, we're done. We are ready to play new characters in a new map with a new story. And it may be because you're kind of sick and tired of this current campaign, or it might be, hey, we've reached a good point, let's end now, or it might be there's nowhere else to go. Now, people I think have the misconception. I'm not saying everyone does, but I think there's a common misconception around it that a campaign can only be kind of have a finale once the characters have reached 16th, I would say 17th level and above. You know, when you get basically when magic users gain access to 9th level spells. You know, that fourth tier, that's where you have to reach before you can have a finale for a campaign. And that is absolutely not true. You can have a finale at whatever level you want. I mean, if we want to think about it in terms of, TV shows, it's wherever the show has a good ending. Now, many shows will go on for several seasons, and that could be seen as a campaign that goes up until 17th level or so. But there's shows, and I'm no expert in TV, so I cannot give examples for some of these, but I know there are some shows where it's like they gave one season and that was it. You might think of that more like a mini series, and that could be compared to a campaign that went from first to fifth level, and that was it, or went from maybe fifth to 10th level, where you only played for a little while, only went up a few levels, but that was the campaign. Whereas you could also say, we're going to play from first to 12th level. I've wrapped up two campaigns, my Lords of Parasip campaign with Vishnu and Loki and those guys, and my Uvengard campaign, which I've done the campaign diaries for. I apologize, there are going to be some things I'm going to bring up from the end of that you guys will not have heard at through the Uvengard campaign diaries, because there was a lot that happened that never got recorded. If people ask me to, I will sit down and do a one long video where I exposition dump everything that happened. But back to ending a campaign. The Lords of Parasep campaign ended with the players being, I think they were 18th level for the final fight, and we figured out they probably would have knocked up to 19th level from the experience they would have gained. Whereas the Uvengard was only about, I think, 13th level when we ended the campaign there. So as you can see, you can end it really wherever you want to. So all that matters is that the players and the DM are all more or less on the same page. Not everyone has to be perfectly in agreement, but everyone should at least be saying, yeah, I'm okay with it if we end here. Now, how do you get to this point? If you've followed me long enough, you should know the answer, and it's talk to your players. I've had some discussions on my other campaigns with saying, yeah, I kind of would like to change things up now. I'm kind of done with this. I'm ready to move on. And once everyone kind of all reaches that point, that's when, okay, now we are all set. Some people are going to get there sooner than others, and that's okay. For those of you who are ready to start a new campaign pretty quickly, take a deep breath. It's great that you're ready to try new things, but hold on, because some of the other players may not be ready quite yet to set those players down. Now, once you've decided we're going to have a finale, whether it be at 5th level, 10th level, 15th, or 20th, every finale should have a finale. It should be some sort of significant challenge. This could be a final villain to thwart or some big social or political challenge to solve. It should be significant, something that'll take a couple sessions to solve. It doesn't need to be a 20-session long epic unless that's what you guys want to do, but it should at least be, hey, we want something big. With the Uberguard, it was something, mine was fairly short and put together. They fought the Scion of Chaos, and it was a big challenge, and it was at least significant, something they spent a couple sessions putting the pieces together and then finally killing him. But it wasn't this massive epic. Nor was it the greatest challenge they ever solved. That's just it. The finale does not need to be the biggest problem ever. It does not need to be the most powerful, well, it likely will be the most powerful villain if that's what you go with, but it doesn't need to be the greatest challenge. With the Uberguard, when they fought the Scion of Chaos, they had a much easier time taking him down than they did up against Fritzless the Lich, which they'd fought earlier. Fritzless was by far a greater challenge, even though the Scion of Chaos was, by the numbers, more powerful. Now, if you want to go with a big finale and be the biggest, strongest threat the players have ever seen, that's totally okay too. There are lots of great examples in TV and cinema and whatever you will about the heroes going through the final challenge and it being the hardest thing they've ever done. And it's awesome. The players will feel great and will love ending on that note. And as I said, ending on that note, be sure to tell your players that this is the end, that we're reaching the final challenge, that, hey, once we get through this arc, we're going to be done. And tell your players when the last session is coming up. With the Lords of Parisep and with the Uberguard as well, I was telling the players, guys, I expect to be done in about 3 to 4 sessions, depending on how quickly we get through content. It gives the player an idea of when things are going, where we were in my plot arc, and what to kind of expect. And I even told them, guys, next week is going to be the final session. Get ready. It's going to be tough. With the Lords of Parisip and them fighting the Dark Six, I said, guys, this is it. This is going to be the biggest thing, and it's going to be massive and epic, and be ready. And they were ready because I told them to be ready. Again, talk to your players. So that's just it. Then you have your finale. You'll have that final session. I would say make sure you can have about 3 to 4 hours, your usual session time of content. That way you can end the session right as you guys are kind of done solving the problem. Now you might say, okay, well, what about epilogue and stuff like that? I think you should have an epilogue and a postmortem. I'm going to talk about that in another video, which I'm actually going to record right after this, but I just wanted to leave it for a separate video because I think it's enough content to talk about that it warrants its own video to keep this from getting too long. So now that you've talked about finales, basically everyone should be on pace, they're ready to move on, let the players know that it's coming, and make sure it's a significant challenge. It doesn't have to be the biggest challenge ever, but something significant. And it, again, does not have to be a villain to thwart. I think a great example of a non-villain finale is Odysseus, when he gets back to his home, and one of the last things he has to do before being done is stringing the bow and shooting the arrow through the axes. It's this incredible challenge that was significant. Probably not the hardest thing he's done, because again, he's done it before, and he's done way crazier things like the Cyclops and Circes and all the other crazy adventures. But it was still significant. So, with finales out of the way, we're going to go to the second half of the video, which is really just me covering the other two ways that a campaign can get wrapped up, and that's the fizzle and the explosion. Now, these two don't warrant as much discussion because they tend to kind of happen without us intending them to happen. We'll start with the explosion because it's kind of a downer. The explosion is where someone gets mad and it leads to the campaign coming to a screeching halt. This could be the DM gets upset, because the players are not respecting things, and so he says, screw it, I'm not going to run for you guys anymore, forget you guys, I'm done with this, let's go do something else. Or it could be, a player gets really upset and it leaves such a bad taste in everyone's mouth that no one wants to play anymore. If it's the DM who gets angry, that's good, more of the explosion. The player getting angry connects to the fizzle, and we'll get to that in just a second. The point is, usually it's someone happens, and I'm not going to say people are necessarily being immature, but typically it's people not being able to take either things seriously enough or not knowing when to, and someone's just joking, or just being immature in other ways. I'm sure someone could come up with 1,000 different scenarios of things of people getting upset that lead to people saying, no, we're going to be done. Now, just because you have an explosion to the end of that puts an end to your campaign, doesn't mean you guys are no longer friends. You guys might make up and say, okay, and it might lead you guys to say, let's try again, let's start over, or you might actually pick it back up if things go well, or you guys might just say, nah, let's not try D&D, let's go do other things. Maybe you can't play D&D together as friends. That's okay. Not every friend group you have is going to want to play D&D together. So that's the explosion. Now for the last one, the fizzle. This is just where people lose interest or get too busy and the campaign just stops. It's like a TV show that, was going just fine, had a season or two, and then just came to an end. Heck, it might have even only had an episode or two aired that just came to an end. I had 2 fizzles where we played for one session and it just never went anywhere. It wasn't that the DM did anything wrong or the players did anything wrong. In fact, the same group of players were all involved with other sessions. In my Umagard, one of our players, Sydney, ran for us one session with the intent of making another campaign that we would be switching off with my campaign. But then Sydney got busy with being sick, and that led to it fizzling out. Meanwhile, Nathaniel, who played in my Lords of Parasip game, tried to start up the campaign using the new Guildmasters to Ravnica guide. Same group of friends, we played for one session, and it just never went anywhere because it was a kind of a prologue session, and then he got busy getting married, and then they've just been busy, and that's okay. Typically, again, you'll see how it's the DM getting busy. Because if the DM's busy, he can't run. If a player is busy, you can play without the player. So that's the fizzle. No one does anything necessarily wrong. Life just gets in the way, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with a fizzle. Maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe you need to get a new DM. Maybe you just need to get a couple different friends to keep people engaged. It could be potentially that people aren't engaged, but that isn't necessarily their fault, nor is it necessarily the DM's fault. So I think that just about covers it. We talked about the finale with, again, it being make sure everyone's on board, ready to put an end to things, let them know that the end is coming, make sure they have a significant challenge. The explosion, which is negative, but is not the end of the world, and the fizzle, which is just, that's kind of all I have to say. I have a lot more that I could say. I could be comparing TV shows. I think DS9, for instance, Star Trek DS9 is a great example of a finale, of a high-level finale with them taking on the significant threat of the Dominion Wars. I'm not familiar with all the other Star Treks, so I can't compare those. You could look at, superhero shows like the CW, the Arrowverse, as high-level ones that are eventually going to get put to an end, I think, at some point, I hope. Firefly would be a great example, I think, of a fizzle, with it having one season and people saying, hey, this is awesome, and then it just never happened. We never got a finale. We just ended. I mean, people might say Serenity was a finale, but the show. Either way, I'm done rambling. I hope you guys got some good information out of this. I'm about to go hit stop recording and go start my next one for epilogues and postmortems. As always, guys, stay cool.